So the idea is that subconsciously we all have a yearning to do what's right. That's a consequence of our spiritual soul having made an oath to God before our birth to live a righteous life, which is where human conscience comes from. We fail pretty frequently, and we become less and less attached to our deeper self. So the Jewish path is return. That's why returning to God means returning in a certain sense to your deeper self. The process of return is noticing what distanced you, realizing that it's harmful to you, and making a plan. We spoke about different ways of making a plan. Okay, what we're going to be talking about today is what happens when it doesn't work. Okay, so this is chapter 2 in one of Maimonides' most famous works, Mishneh Torah, first treatise, okay, volume 5. Okay, so it's on soul sickness. So when you talk about physical illness, what exactly does that mean? If you say someone is ill, what does that mean? Okay, that there's something wrong biologically, whether or not it's causing symptoms. Isn't that true? So soul sickness means there's something wrong inside. You may or may not have symptoms, but when you're blocked, you're blocked. Okay, clear? So physical illness is caused either by bacteria or viruses or trauma. Similarly, spiritual illness is caused either by outside influences, an abusive parent, whatever, which would be traumatic, or something disbalanced on the inside through bad choices. Could you see where this is so? Okay. So with physical illness, there are symptoms. Similarly, there are 3 main symptoms of spiritual illness. So here they are. The first main symptom is a need to rationalize everything you do. So there are people who have completely different vocabularies for their own deeds than they have for other people's deeds. So if it's somebody else, they're controlling and angry. If it's me, I'm responsible and assertive. Okay, clear? Okay, so what does rationalizing tell you about yourself?
You're in denial.
That you're in denial, that you're not comfortable with yourself. Okay, so if you catch yourself, realize this is a red flag. It's telling you that something is blocked on the inside. The next symptom, there are only 3 symptoms, and they get progressively worse. The second symptom is escapism. Okay, so what are some escapes that we have in today's society? Drugs, anything else? Alcohol, food, TV, all the media, music, MTV, relationships, shopping. Okay, clear? So what does escapism tell you about yourself? You don't want to be with you. You want to get out of you. Suicide is the ultimate escape. Okay, I don't know why I feel the need to share this with you. Suicide is on the up. Okay, did you know this?
What?
Suicide is becoming a more...
Yeah, they want to have people actually help you commit suicide. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, suicide is becoming popular.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so suicide is becoming popular, it's becoming legal, which means it's subtly encouraged. And
You're lying. It's become legal?
In many places, yeah.
In Colorado, somewhere in the state of the US already legalized it.
Yeah, Oregon legalized it, but it's spreading. It's a movement that's spreading. And surprisingly, guess what? The suicide rates are rising. It's the ultimate escape. It's the worst symptom of discontent. Okay. So the fact that suicide is on the rise and that people are justifying it and maintaining it and encouraging it, it says that the entire society is discontent. So when people encourage suicide, which they do, it's because they empathize with the pain of the person who wants to commit suicide, which means that something in them says, yes, I understand that kind of pain, which is like, it's a tragic situation. Okay, clear? So the third and even more severe sign of something being wrong is emotional denial. So a person who says, I'm so depressed, I can't bear my life, I'm overwhelmed, I want to commit suicide, is in better shape than a person who says, everything's just fine, I think I'll commit suicide. Okay, clear? Emotional denial is the worst possible symptom. And of course, by the nature of things, people can't tell if they're in emotional denial. Somebody else would have to tell you that. Okay, clear? Okay, yeah?
What's the line between emotional denial and emuna,
Okay, so here, that's a very good question, and I want to tell you why. People often confuse this. They think if they say I'm in pain, that means I don't trust God. It's not true. Do you have that? Is that your siddur? Could I look at it? Okay, so I'm going to read you a random selection from Tehillim, right? So I didn't know what I was. Well, actually, it's not Tehillim that I got to. Okay, let me go a little further. Do you have Tehillim in the siddur? Yeah, here. So here's a random piece of Tehillim. Listen to how David HaMelech experienced his own pain. A song of David, his memory. Hashem, don't rebuke me through your anger. Don't give me pain through your fury. Your arrows pierce me. I'm continually pierced by your hand. There's no place whole within me because of your rage. There's no peace within me because of my sin. Because my sins have gone above my head like a heavy burden. They're overwhelming to me. I'm skipping some of it. I'm going to the last line. Don't abandon me, Hashem, my God. Don't distance yourself. Come, help me. You, Hashem, are my salvation. So notice, he didn't say, well, today's great, and yesterday was great, and tomorrow is going to be even greater. That's not what he said. He spoke about his terrible pain, but he knew to turn to Hashem to help him. So that meant he saw purposefulness in the pain, and he let it take him to the address to draw closer to Hashem. So a person not only is permitted to feel pain, but if they are in pain, disguising it, which is so popular in the Western world, it's like so out to admit being in pain. Disguising it isn't healthy. But being able to say, okay, here's what I'm suffering, here's where I'm going to go with it, here's where I'm going to let it take me, is a whole different story. Okay, this is clear? Okay, more questions just on this part?
But why would you say that's worse than suicide? Because suicide is ultimately killing yourself and taking yourself out of this world.
Because suicide means you have no belief that things could change, be better, have meaning, lead you to any place. It's a terrible thing. Emotional denial puts you so far out of touch with yourself that you may end up in self-destruction without enough awareness to put the brakes on.
Right.
Most people who actually commit suicide have given other people and themselves numerous hints as to how much pain they're suffering. It's almost never a surprise. It's when a person isn't giving anyone any hints that it's much more dangerous.
More potential for them to change as opposed to someone that can't see.
Right. Okay, clear? Okay, so physically, if you have severe symptoms, what are some severe symptoms of physical illness? Extreme weakness, pain, something else, breathlessness. So is it accurate to say that every time you suffer pain or feel a little weak, you definitely should go to the doctor? Is that true?
No, not always.
Oh, so how would you differentiate? When would you say, this is serious enough, I better see a doctor? Or this is just going to go away, I'm not going to waste my time and money going to the doctor? How will you know which is the right decision?
You have a certain amount of time that you give it.
Okay, so one is how enduring is it? Okay, clear? So a symptom that's very enduring, even if the symptom itself is not so severe, might require attention. Okay, what else would make you go to a doctor besides whether it's lasting a long time?
They always say that on a scale from 1 to 10, how painful is it?
How severe is it? So there's a big difference between, my third toe, like I have a bit of an overgrown nail, and like if I'm wearing tight shoes, it pinches. That's different than I feel like an elephant is stepping on my chest. Okay, whatever, clear? Okay, so on the 1 to 10 scale, where is this? Good. Last thing, is it getting in my way? You understand this? So the same thing holds true spiritually. If any of the symptoms I just discussed is of brief endurance, we all rationalize sometimes. Is it true? Okay. We all escape a little. Is that true? Okay. We all go into emotional denial when things are extremely heavy once in a while. Is that true? So you don't have to take yourself that seriously. unless the symptoms are as we described. So if something is enduring, which means you rationalize all the time, you can never admit being wrong, you always just give it a different name, then there's something wrong. You have to deal with it. If you're escaping all of the time, if you're going from eating to drinking to drugs to relationships, something is wrong. If you're in emotional denial, something is wrong. Okay, clear? Next would be severity. Even if it's not so enduring, but you rationalize things that get in the way of your life, like you tell somebody you're going to marry them when they're not. And you say, oops, just joking. Okay, this is like, no. You do dangerous escapes. Do people do that? What's a dangerous escape? Bungee jumping, hard drugs. Okay, clear? So people sometimes go that route. Or extreme emotional denial, where the person enters an almost schizophrenic state. Have any of you ever met anybody who had multiple personality disorder? I had 2 students over the years, I'm teaching more than 30 years, who had this disorder. It's almost always a consequence of childhood sexual abuse. So here's how this goes. It's like the perfect example of emotional escapism. Children don't think rationally. They're brighter than we are emotionally, but they're not as bright as we are intellectually. So they think irrationally. Children who are sexually abused blame who? Themselves or the perpetrator? They always blame themselves. They always blame themselves. Telling them it's not your fault doesn't always enter. Okay, clear? So when a person is in that kind of pain, where they blame themselves, they create fantasy lives. So most people, especially as children, do some degree of fantasy living. Did any of you have vivid fantasy lives? I had a very vivid fantasy life. I was an only child, which is so boring, you know. So I was the Lone Ranger, and I had many fantasies. But a person who's suffering doesn't want to return to their real life, so their fantasy life becomes more important than their real life. But they still know what's fantasy and what's real. There's no crossover at this point. If later in life they again enter an emotionally, genuinely painful situation, so the pain they're suffering then as an adult ends up bringing up the pain they suffered as a child, and then reality is too hard for them to deal with. So they create a pretend life that's a nice escape. So one of my students, as I told you, I had 2 students. One of my students, again, suffered as a child. She came to Neve. In her Neve life, she was what she wanted was approval and love. So she was like the perfect student, made friends with all of the rabbis and tutors. Could you picture this? In her other life, she converted to Christianity because her need for love and approval had no limits. So as much as we can give her there, she wanted more. So in the afternoons and the evenings, she was involved with the church here in Yerushalayim. So things ended for her. Her ability to cope ended when she married. So she married in her Jewish life, and her disconnect between her 2 selves was so great that she really, when she was in her Jewish life, did not know about her Christian life. She really didn't know it. Like there was a huge disconnect. This is true psychosis. So her husband discovered it, and she would deny it, but then he would say, "I have a picture of you. This is you in the So they divorced. Which life do you think she went to? Think about psychological necessity at this point. She was discovered as being a bad girl in her Jewish life. So which life? So of course she went to her Christian life. Okay, clear? Okay, the other one was she was less ill because she had some recognition of where she was, but she was still fairly ill. So also again, the same sexual history as a child. So again, she came here basically for approval, and she made up different life stories to different tutors and teachers. So to one of the tutors who's young and very beautiful, she claimed to have been Miss New Jersey. To me, she said that her father was a judge. You got the picture, very different. Okay, so she had all of these lives going on, and for attention and sympathy, she claimed to be in a terrorist attack. So she called up, I don't know who, one of the rabbis, and said, I'm hiding behind a car, I don't know what's going to happen. Now, he believed her. So be him. What will you do?
Go find her, call.
How will you go find her?
You call the cops,
You call the cops. Okay, so she was discovered in Froyo. Okay, got this? So what do you think happened in the end? What's that? What?
She did her own thing. She gave up because she didn't feel accepted.
She didn't feel accepted anywhere, and in the end she made a suicide attempt because her emotional denial and pain was so great. Okay, but so the only reason I'm telling you these terrible stories is to get across to you that with emotional denial, you really do have to seek help. Okay, clear? So the question is, if you're talking about medical sickness, you know who to go to. You go to a doctor. How do you find a doctor? Do you just go to any old doctor? References. With soul sickness, who do you think could help you?
Rabbis or psychology.
So I want to give you now when rabbi, when mentor, when psychologist, when psychiatrist, when social worker, because there's a range.